games and eliminated the Sharks in Game 7. So can the Ducks pull it off, or will the Sharks choke, as they have routinely done in the playoffs?
I hate being a Debbie Downer. I'm a massive Ducks fan. I turned off my TV in Game 7 against the Ducks when it was the Ducks playing the Red Wings. I suffered through the 2003 loss in the Stanley Cup Final with Paul Kariya. And beyond that, I was at the games in 98, 97, 96. I've been there. They're not coming back this season, guys. This series, for me, is cooked. If they somehow pull off a win on Wednesday, you're looking at a loss on Friday. I just don't see this Ducks team showing us anything 5-on-5. They're not scoring. They have one even strength goal or two. I'm sorry. Is it one or two? Because looking at Raquel's goal tonight was a power play.
Yeah.
Raquel was a power play goal. Lindholm was a power play goal. So then the only goal that was even strength was Jakob Silfverberg. This team 5-on-5 is garbage. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're not creating anything offensively. I'm not seeing anything happening for this team. The Sharks have scored 8 and 6, so 14 goals in 3 games. I just don't see this Ducks team coming back in San Jose and winning a game on Wednesday. I hope they do. I hope I'm wrong. I really, really, really do. But I don't see the Sharks pulling a 2014 again.
All right, so if I want to give you guys some hope, and I'm looking back to the series where the Sharks ended up losing, the 2014 series where they lost to the Kings in 7 games after being up 3-0. So in that year, the Kings were 25th in goals for. They were first in goals against. The Sharks were 5th in both goals for, goals against. So the Sharks were the better team offensively. In Game 1, they pumped the Kings 6-3. In Game 2, they pumped the Kings 7-2. In Game 3, they won 4-3 in overtime, and they were up 3-0. Then the Kings went on to win 6-3, 3-0, 4-1, and 5-1. That's a team who was ranked 25th in offense. The Ducks this year, I believe, were 23rd. Now, of course, these are two different teams, and the Kings back then were a great team, and they were defensively sound, but they ended up rattling off 18 goals in the last 4 games of that series. So, I mean, I wouldn't put it against the Ducks to do that. I feel like they have the guys to do it if they can figure it out, but I mean, if we're being realistic, this series is pretty much done. There's a small chance they can get back, but there's a reason only 4 teams in NHL history have ever done it. And that Kings team was a special team back in 2014, and that they were able to pull it off. So, you know, there's hope. There's a chance. There's always a chance when you're still in the series, but the Ducks are going to have to completely change the way they're playing. Because I mean, obviously the Kings did after Game 3 in that series, and they completely switched it up and changed things, and they were able to change the way they're playing and outmatch the San Jose Sharks for 4 games pretty easily. And they were pretty easy wins, all by a margin of at least 3 goals. So I wouldn't put it past them, but it's going to be tough. Let's move on to the next question here. Kyle asked on Twitter, and I believe this was at the end of the second period, so it just got worse from there. He's like, what drink of choice is allowing you to get through this game?
So for me personally, I usually go with Modern Times. I've been drinking their Fortunate Islands, which I did not go out and get, so I settled with Sierra Nevada Sidecar. I drank a 6-pack from the second period to the third period. I was not happy. It was not a good game tonight. So that's what I drank tonight, Eddie. What about you?
Well, I've been sick, so I drank water, which is which is obviously not as fun. So I was unfortunately suffering through the whole thing entirely sober. Hopefully next time, if this game 4 coming up is not as bad, I won't be sick, and I'll actually be able to drink my way through the game and not have to suffer through it completely sober. But no, today, unfortunately, as tough as it was, I had to drink water to avoid getting sicker than I am now. Let's move on to the next question here. Diane had some questions about Perry. She said, what's Perry's problem? Is it depression? Is it drug use? And that was specifically not like heroin or cocaine, but is that like drug use with his injuries that he's had, or is it due to the injuries that he's had so far? What is his problem? I mean, in my opinion, I think it's just age and the fact that he can't keep up with the game. But do you think it's one of the things she mentioned?
No, not at all. I mean, I mentioned this before on the show that the Ducks have said that he's worn knee braces on both knees at some points. He's got bad knees, really bad knees, and that's no secret. We've heard rumors of him having an ACL injury. over last season. We've seen him go down with knee injuries before. Games caught up with him, and he's not as effective as he used to be. And if you're going to judge him by his contract numbers, you're going to be sorely disappointed year in and year out. But if you're looking at him as a guy who's going to score you 40, 45 points a season, and you're okay with that, then Corey Perry's a good player for you. He's not your heart-winning trophy player. He's not your 50-goal scorer. He's not your 100-point guy. He's now your 50-point guy max. That's just what you have to settle with Corey Perry. It's knee injuries and the game's caught up with him. He's got nothing wrong with him other than that.
You got to give a shout out to King Pepper on Twitter, saying the Forever Mighty podcast is only speaking the truth about the current state of the Ducks playoffs and the future of the hockey club. I got to thank you for the kind words, King Pepper on Twitter. We're doing our best to guide you guys through a tough loss and look forward to hopefully a brighter future next season. Next question, a little bit more relevant after the goalie change tonight, but does Ryan Miller get the net in Game 4? Paula was asking that question.
No, it's going to be John Gibson. I feel like I would be really hard-pressed to see Ryan Miller come in.
I feel like it was a courtesy pull today, and that's why.
Yeah, what are you going to do with Gibby? He gave how many 2-on-1 goals? I mean, you can say whatever you want. Oh, he didn't make the outstanding save here and there. It's like, okay, hold on a minute. Like, the Ducks defense got exposed on unfortunate plays, and Gibby just got hung out to dry. I can't blame Gibson in the series. I'd love to blame John Gibson in the series and say it was his fault, and we should never got rid of Anderson. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? If anyone knows me from the Puck guys, I'm the one who said we should probably trade Gibson and keep Freddie and get more for Gibson. Everyone's high on Gibby. Gibby's been great. Vezina Trophy award-winning nominating season, and this series has not been his fault. He's been hung out to dry a lot.
On that same point, Lori asked, should we have changed the goalie earlier? And she was stating that the Ducks, she feels the Ducks play better in front of Ryan Miller. I don't know if it really would have mattered, honestly, because you can't, I mean, you pull him early, then you're essentially putting it on his shoulders and saying it was his fault, which I don't believe. I mean, if anybody thinks that goals 2 and 3 by the Sharks were his fault, I don't think we were watching the same game, because there's really not much he can do on those plays. And you look at the fact that 3 identical goals were scored in this series. I know it was Logan Couture had the first one where he's on a breakaway, pulled it to his backhand. Today it was Marcus Sorensen. I can't remember who it was in Game 2, but it was exactly the same type of identical goal on a breakaway. Can't blame him on those ones. I mean, what's the guy supposed to do? I mean, he can only make so many good saves on a 2-on-1 in a game. If you think that's his fault, then I mean, like I said, we're not watching the same hockey game tonight. So I don't think they should have changed him earlier. I don't think the Ducks play any better in front of Miller or Gibson. I mean, I just feel like when Miller's had to come in, he's played pretty well, and that's obviously in the regular season. But no, I really don't think it would have mattered if they changed him earlier or when they did at the start of the third period.
It's hard to blame the goaltending. I get people's frustration. No, I really look at Paola and Laurie talking about the goaltending. I get it. I mean, you see the goal is getting pushed in the Ducks net, and it's not a pretty sight to see when you're a Ducks fan. But honestly, coming from the chances that were surrendered with this Ducks team, it's hard to put it on the goaltending there. I have no problem with what's been in the crease this season or this playoffs. This is not a Jonathan Bernier episode. This is more or less the Ducks being victimized by chances and not converting on their own. This has nothing to do with this in the crease.
Yeah,
but I get it. I understand. When you see an 8-1 score, you're looking at something as a fan. You're just like, what could we have done to change this? And I mean, but honestly, it's just not goaltending. You got to look at the 5 guys in front of the net.
Yeah, you put Miller in that same situation, and it's the same outcome. I mean, nobody's really stopping those plays. There's not much you can do unless you're going to make a ridiculous save. I mean, there's just not much you can do. Those were perfectly executed 2-on-1s by the Sharks. I mean, great passes to a guy who's wide open. There's not much you can do. And James brings up a perfect point here. Without Gibson, the Ducks wouldn't even have made the playoffs. I mean, that's right. That's the truth. They wouldn't have. So you can't blame him. I mean, if he was at fault for the goals in these 3 games, we'd be the first ones to blame him and to criticize him for being at fault, but he hasn't been. I mean, he's been outstanding in the games that he's played. He's maybe the one goal you can blame him for, give a little bit of fault for, was the hurdle goal in Game 2. He overplayed it slightly. There was one goal in this game I felt like he could have played a little bit better, but other than that, it's been 2-on-1s, it's been power play goals, it's been guys left wide open. there's not much you can do on any of them. And again, like you said, you look at an 8-1 scoreline and your first thing is to blame the goaltenders. But Gibson was good in this game, and the Ducks just didn't help him out in front. And that kind of goes into a question. I'll bring it up. We've already answered it. Jason asked if the issue was defense or Gibson. I feel like the easy answer is defense. It was awful in this game. There was some bad plays where Montour wiped out. There's not much you can do on that play, but a lot of odd man rushes we've seen in this series. You have to blame the defense for allowing them.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of the way it goes here. And it's also unfortunate plays. I mean, Montour blew a tire too.
Yeah,
I mean there's some plays there where you could look at him and say this could have been better or that could have been better on the defensive side of things. But unfortunate things happened. I mean, Lindholm got caught up in a rush. Montour blows a tire on the half wall. Look at Montour last game. He was all over the ice positively and negatively, trying to do maybe too much, trying to get this team back into the win column. And it just hasn't worked out. But you can't put it on anyone in the crease.
Yeah. So Sweetwater had a question on, I think this was on Reddit. She said, have the Ducks' shortcomings the past couple of years come as a result of the frugality of Murray?
Frugality? No.
Yeah.
Personnel selection? Yes. And who you're going to give contracts to that have no move clauses? Yes. I mean, the Getzlaf Perry one, you kind of can't do anything about those. Those guys won the cup. They were in their prime. They were dominant during their era of play. I mean, really, they've kind of come down a little bit, especially Perry, obviously, as we talked about him earlier. You got to give them what they want. You're going to get the big bucks out of those guys. The Kessler one, I love Ryan Kessler when he's not injured. This contract's going to hurt Anaheim. And Kevin Bieksa, that contract hurts the Ducks, as we've seen. Those are just some contracts you can't look past. I mean, really, that's how I feel about it. It's more of a personnel selection than it is frugality on Bob Murray. The Ducks played to the cap.
Yeah, and I don't think it's all on frugality. I think you are right that it comes to the fact that the personnel selection was forced them to be against the cap. But then you look at some of the decisions that he's made at the deadline, and you have to think that he just wasn't willing to give up the assets to get those players, and that is frugality on his part, where he doesn't think it's worth it to give up what was given up for Vander Kane to go get him, or give up a second or a third round pick to bring in that depth defenseman that can really shield you from the issues the Ducks have had in this series. I mean, Cam Fowler has been a big hole for the Ducks, and they haven't been able to fill it. And not saying a guy like Ian Cole or any of the guys picked up at the deadline could have filled that hole, but it definitely would have made it a little bit of an easier transition. And then having a guy like Evander Kane or Max Pacioretty, if you pull the trigger on those guys, I mean, it comes back to a point that you said where a lot of GMs just overvalue their picks and the prospects they have in their system. And they really believe that they've drafted the best player at that position in that draft and that they're going to do well. And I mean, the Ducks prospects have performed this season. Maxim Comtois has taken a huge step forward. Sam Steele has a lot of promise. Max Jones, despite being injured, is a guy the Ducks feel is still going to be a good player, and that may be, but the Ducks window is it's almost closed. I mean, it's essentially closed after this season, if not maybe one more crack at it next year, where they're not going to be a contender, but they're going to be a team, again, considered maybe a dark horse if they have a good season. You got to make these moves. You can't sit there and think, oh, well, what if I give up the second round pick? I could have got this guy in the draft with it instead of getting a player who could help you now. I think that is where you deal with the issue of Murray being a little bit too frugal when he really needs to add to this team.
Yeah, no, he needed to do something. I mean, we definitely don't want to give up a first, second, and third for Tomas Tatar, who hasn't done anything for Vegas.
Yeah.
But, I mean, looking beyond a guy like Evander Kane, who's known to do some damage, he was for, a second-round pick?
Yeah.
And I mean, I would have been okay with the Thomas Vanek. Honestly, with the Vanek,
he's been good,
with that too.
He's been good for Columbus. So they needed something, and I feel like his unwillingness to give up the assets is what hurt them this season. But it's not the main reason that it's a lot of things kind of buckled into one. So I think we already asked this question. I don't know if you'd seen this question or not, but Bald and Beardless on Twitter asked what are the chances for some real changes this offseason. We already hit on this, but
slim to none.
Slim to none, yeah. I mean, that sums it up right there. I don't think there's going to be anything real that changes, barring maybe a couple little things. Brandon asked, aside from the penalties, do you think these 3 losses fall on the players, the coach, or the systems? Again, we touched on this, but if you had to pick one of those 3, where it would mainly fall on, do you think it's the players, the coach, or the system